Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael, of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, we do not, brothers and sisters, intend for this to be long. This is, brothers and sisters, were the laws in Leviticus 11 made up by man. That is a concept that has been going around, in no disrespect, maybe too much inside of the internet world. There are questions that are asked, and it's not to try to read a person's mind, but there have been questions asked as if eating meat at all is a death penalty matter. It has been asked about the portion in Leviticus where it says the unclean and the clean may eat alike, as if that is talking about eating unclean meat. No, that is not talking about that. When you read in Leviticus chapter 21 and Leviticus chapter 22, the portion that says the unclean and the clean may eat alike is talking about whether a priest of the house of Levi, if he or she is unclean, they are still able to eat off of the offerings because that is how they get their food. Brothers and sisters, in part one, we went over the matter, if we will, of Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, and whether that was a diet that is totally against the given diet in Leviticus 11. In part one of this, we went over the fact, brothers and sisters, that there was Noah who was told about clean and unclean, and that he built an altar and offered clean animals on it. We went over Leviticus 11 about the matter of clean and unclean. And what has happened in certain cases is that it has been stated that clean and unclean was irrelevant because the people were told not to eat meat. As in Genesis, it does not say, nonetheless, you shall not eat meat. If we are reading in the scriptures about a man, correct me if I'm wrong, to build an ark, that is in today's terminologies of today or measurements of today, about the size of 3 football fields, then why will it be so hard to say do not eat meat? A question asked in part one of this presentation, which is on this channel, please subscribe to the channel, is if Genesis says that the imagination of man is wicked from his youth, and if Genesis 11 was made, even if Leviticus 11 was made by man, then why are there stipulations? When man, even coming into the understanding of Israel later on in one's life, some brothers, elders, if you will, even have stated, well, I had to give up pork for the understanding of the Torah, but it was worth it, even though pork tastes good. I've heard Israelites say, while in their garments, that when they used to eat pork, that pork tasted good. I've heard Israelites say that pork tastes good, but we are commanded to not eat it, so they don't eat it. So in light of all of that, why will there be stipulations on what man is allowed to eat in Leviticus? If the people were, according to some vegetarians and vegans in Israel, actually say that meat being consumed during the timing of Passover is when man began to fall. So now they're trying to say by default that there are 2 different Torot within the Torah, or 2 different laws, teachings within the Torah. Let us take with that understanding and not at the same token knock in the book of Bereshit or Genesis. If the law in whole is in Bereshit or in Genesis, you have only, in their understanding, the diet of herbs. Were we as humans made to be herbivores, you will have no fringes. You will have no judges and officers, like Deuteronomy says. Now, mind you, when I say Bereshit in talking about some, not all, vegetarians or vegans of the house of Israel, I can only talk about like chapter 1 and chapter 2. Because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who lived during the time of the book of Genesis and passed away before the book of Exodus, they ate meat. We pointed that out in part 1. So now if one is saying that by the time Exodus speaks upon the children of Israel eating meat, as if one is seeking in culture and seeking in character and losing one's way. And the concept that Genesis 1:29, while inside of a garden, they are told to eat the herbs. That will make us herbivores, brothers and sisters. There are so many things that we are and are able to eat that may not come, brothers and sisters, from that same said garden. Correct me if I'm wrong. While this is not a promotion to eat meat every single day, while this is not a promotion to not have a majority of a plant-based diet in our diets today, while I do know and acknowledge that the animals on the farms, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, that we do not own, who knows what they do with those animals? That is not to be denied. The point in this part 2, as in part 1 of this speech, is because you have brothers and sisters in the understanding of Israel. All you got to do is go on Facebook and see some of the comments or the post, if you will, that say that Israel was going off since the book of Exodus and having lamb on Passover. I know of a family, and this is not to mention names. I don't know if they're vegetarian or vegan, but I do know that once it comes down to the timing of Passover, they are either vegetarian or vegan, like the majority of the year. And I know that once it comes down to Passover, I know they eat lamb, because I remember the mother of that family being asked by her child, mommy, or Ima, should I say, can I go and eat that? And she said, no, my son, you already ate lamb and you had meat on Passover. He honored his mother's request. That particular family, and not to mention any names, nor any timing, nor any place where it happened at. But I remember being an eye and ear witness to that conversation. I was sitting at the table or standing by the table when he went to ask his mother that. Who among the carnivorous Israelites, such as myself, who among us can sit there and knock that? He asked his mother permission. She gave him an answer. He honored it. While at the same token, this particular family is not trying to say that the house of Israel was going off in the book of Exodus by having lamb. So when I do these presentations about the statement of Leviticus 11 being man-made, it is not intended to every vegetarian and or vegan of the house of Israel. There are people who have had medical conditions, gave up on the sugar, gave up on a lot of flesh eating, and went plant-based. Ezekiel 47 verse 12 says that the trees is the medicine. That's in Ezekiel 47. Every medicinal thing that the doctors have has some kind of herb in it. So, getting a little personal, if we will, I know that my mother, who passed away from cancer, was told by her doctor to not take a particular herb called St. John's wort. Let's not even focus on the name. Just understand that it's an herb. The name of this herb is called St. John's wort, and it helps fight cancer. The medicinal things of these nations don't really do in that particular manner. Diabetes, there are things that you can get medicinally, health-wise, not the metformin that they prescribe, but rather a thing called bitter melon. Bitter melon, you can get that out of GNC and those health stores like that. You can order those types of things, say, upon the internet, if you will. But these people's definition of medicinal healing is made to keep you in their pocket. That I've seen even with my family. I do not profess that all Israel or all Israel should be carnivorous, nor do I profess or promote that all Israel should be herbivores. As in part one of this, we are part flesh and part liquid/water. So that means that we should not say we don't need water. Just as much by default, we should not say that we do not need flesh. There are laws in the Torah that speak upon certain manners, like flesh. You're not supposed to eat blood. You're supposed to let the blood drain on the ground as water. Some have stated, why go through all of that? Gotta find a person, the perfect animal. Make sure it's clean. Make sure the blood is drained out. Why you gotta go through all of that? Just give up all meat and just eat vegetables. It's because it doesn't say that we can't eat flesh, my brother or sister. That's why. Proverbs says, whoso finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains the favor of the Most High. A woman of value is above rubies. Who can find her? That's what Proverbs says. So just like you have to find a particular flesh that is clean to eat and make sure you drain the blood out, and they who say, why go through all of that in Leviticus and just straight up just only eat vegetables only and become a herbivore or a vegetarian or a vegan, just as much as it's difficult and you got to put work in to get the correct meat, so does the scriptures teach us about finding that correct wife. You got to put in that work for that. So should we just give up on getting wives as men and brothers in the house of Yisrael because it says her value is far above rubies and who can find her? Again, this is not, brothers and sisters, a promotion to become carnivorous or an herbivore as a human. This is a response to people saying that the laws we see in Leviticus 11 are made up. Let us, brothers and sisters, get into this particular manner, if we will. All right? We want to, brothers and sisters, all right, pull up, if we will, the PowerPoint in this particular case. By doing the screen share. And in doing so, brothers and sisters, let us see what we can ascertain and why a brother is going in this particular manner about this. Let us go to the slideshow from the beginning. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Giving honor to the Most High. Shalom. This is a part 2 of the presentation concerning if the dietary laws in Leviticus 11 were made up by men. While I do not say no one should not be a vegan or vegetarian by choice, there are those who say the, quote, original diet did not have meat, flesh involved. On this channel, please subscribe to it if you have not done so already. You will be able to see what was done, brothers and sisters, dated July 31st. which is part 1 to this. Next slide. We're going to let the book speak. Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, Genesis chapter 8, verse 20, and Genesis 7, verse 2. Every moving thing that liveth shall be food for you. As the green herb have I given you all. Now, this is not saying that you can eat everything on the earth. This is not saying that. Because Noah already knew about what was clean and unclean. And we see that prior to chapter 9 in this. And Noah built an ark, and Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So right there, we already see the matter, if we will, of clean and unclean in this particular case. Brothers and sisters, let us go on. Of every clean beast, thou shalt take to thee 7 and 7, each with his mate. And of the beasts that are not clean, 2 and 2, each with his mate. So clean beasts and unclean beasts were already known before the flood. After the flood, in Genesis 8, Noah of clean beast he took as an offering on the altar. So when we go in chapter 9, he already have an understanding of clean and unclean. When it says every moving thing that liveth shall be food for you, he already knew about clean and unclean already. That's something we want to emphasize on in this particular case. You understand? All right. Let's go on, if you will, to the next part with the time allotted. Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 23 in Hebrew. And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the common, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. Now, what can we gather from this here? It says, and we want to show this, if we will, with the laser pointer, they shall teach. Shown in the red there, we see yoru. Yoru means they shall teach. That is a hefil stem verb, brothers and sisters. That word right there, yoru, means in English, they shall teach. Now, if you look at the Hebrew, you will see green and yellow in it. And I want to show what we're talking about with the highlighter. And we want to show what is the green part shown here, the word tameh. The word tameh is shown right here in the green as unclean. Not that I dislike green, the color, just using that as a pointer. And here we see, brothers and sisters, this here, la tahor. Tahor meaning, as pointed out in part 1, clean. So we already see in Israel a very strong matter between clean and unclean, clean and unclean. So we do not want to sit back, think, or suggest about a matter of not being clean or so. Next slide, please. Exodus chapter 9. We're going to sit there and show why this is pointed out, according to many who speak upon the matter of diet in Israel. In the 3rd month, after the children of Israel were going forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. And the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments. And be ready against the 3rd day. For the 3rd day, the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. Now, Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. So they were at Mount Sinai or Har Sinai, which means the mountain of Sinai. Sinai is a place, brothers and sisters. Why does this become important? Some have stated, I don't know fully why that statement is made, that the law in bulk was given at Mount Sinai or at Sinai, and the other laws outside of, say, Exodus were just as they were traveling along the way in the wilderness. Remember this portion right here, because while they was at Sinai, we know for sure, if nothing else, it covers chapter 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And let us remember that particular stance, brothers and sisters, upon the matter with Har Sinai or Mount Sinai, because that means that that mountain is in the land of the Sinai. Let's go on and show why this becomes important. It says that the top of the mountain was on fire because Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, the Most High, descended upon it. Here we see within the Sinai how it is burnt to this day in that particular manner, if we will, brothers and sisters. Next slide, please. Here we see another depiction of that, where it is burnt, unlike the other mountains, if we will, in this particular case. So we want to point this out, going back to the book of Exodus, where it says, brothers and sisters, now Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because Yah descended upon it in fire, and in the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke in a furnace. There's a couple of things to point out. You're not going to say the one who caused that came out of humans. It did not go through man into woman and then was pushed out of a woman. The one who caused Mount Sinai to quake greatly and to leave it to this day and time, as we see here in this particular case. Next slide, please. Let us look. Now, traditional Mount Sinai, as we see here, brothers and sisters. Mount Sinai in Arabia. Now, why does this become important? We're going to show. Because the Exodus we see here in the land of Midian. Remember in Exodus 3, Moses was in the land of Midian. Arabia, the way of the Philistines. Exodus chapter 13 says that is not the way the Israelites went into the land. They went this way, brothers and sisters, and stayed in the land of Midian, and then eventually went up through the west side, through the Jordan. Through the east side. I totally stand corrected. Through the east side of the Jordan, and then going west. This here, we want to show with the laser pointer, if we will, right? This right here, brothers and sisters, is the Mediterranean. Where me and my lady was going into Egypt, we actually saw the Mediterranean from the airplane. So you just want to point this out. Land of Midian. So now going back here, if we will, this here is still right here shown with the laser pointer, Mount Sinai in Arabia. And that is where you see these particular mountains looking, as we say, as such. This is in modern day Saudi Arabia, not, brothers and sisters, in this southern part of the Sinai Peninsula. All right, so we just want to point that out for reference purposes, if we will. Exodus 24:16 and Exodus 34:29. And the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and a cloud covered it 6 days. And the seventh day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of the testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses knew not that the skin of his face sent forth beams while he talked with him. Moses didn't realize what was going on, perhaps fully. He's the messenger. He did his mission. It wasn't for him to come down. And as we was talking on this channel earlier about titles, I spoke with the Most High, and therefore the Most High, and he spoke with me. So now I'm now your leader. And no, he didn't come back to the people with that energy like some Israelites try to do and say today. No disrespect intended. You understand? It wasn't an imagery kind of thing like, hey, look at me. I'm this. Wasn't like that. He didn't even know what was fully going on with him. Let's read in Exodus 34:29. As pointed out there again. And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of the testimony in Moses' hand. And as we know, they were written on both sides, the front and the back. And when he came down from the mount, that Moses knew not that the skin of his face sent forth beams. That means that there's power. We want to point out that the understanding of the people eating meat was brought to them by a man-made mandate is not. Saying that we can eat meat is not man-made thoughts. The understanding that the dietary law was not given while the people were not at Sinai is also incorrect. We ask you all to please read, understand. If you have questions, please ask. Now, we already read in Exodus 19, line upon line and precept upon precept, that the people were at Mount Sinai. Exodus 34, it says Moses came down from the mount. While you read in between Exodus 19 and Exodus 34, there is a portion in there concerning the making of the tabernacle that the Most High said, make the tabernacle exactly as I showed you in the mount. So in between the chapters of Exodus 19, right, that we went over, in the 3rd month after the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. So Sinai is a place, and in that wilderness of Sinai, there is a mountain called Mount Sinai, or the mountain of Sinai. We want to point this out. Now let's go on. It says, now Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. So when we look upon this part right here, let's go and show these pictures again. We want to emphasize this because the theme is that the people were told to eat meat, not at Sinai. So in other words, it alludes to perhaps the understanding of saying those laws on eating meat was man-made after they was at Sinai. But remember, we just read at Exodus 19, line upon line and precept upon precept, that they were in the wilderness of Sinai 3 months after they left the land of Egypt. Let's go on. They at Sinai, showing that picture there, showing it there. So Sinai, we already pointed out, if you remember, letting the book speak, Exodus 3, it says Mount Sinai in Arabia, not over here, but rather over here. So we wanted to show the map. Exodus 13, letting the book speak, it says they didn't go the way of the Philistines. They went, when you read in Numbers chapter 33, and then in Joshua chapter 1, they went, brothers and sisters, this way, and then went up into the land, going from the eastern part of it. This is Moab over here, for those who already know how these maps work. In that particular case, Moses passed away in the plains of Moab. This is what we want to point out for edification purposes. They did not go out of Egypt, stayed north on the Sinai Peninsula, and then went in through the way of the Philistines. They didn't do that. Nor, brothers and sisters, did they go into out of Egypt from, you see, Goshen and Ramesses, which, brothers and sisters, Ramesses, P. Ramsey, brothers and sisters, is the same land as Kesen, which the Greeks called it Kesen, was ancient Israel, referred to it as Goshen. All right. The ancient Egyptians another time referred to that same land as Hutwawet. But we want to point out that the people, they didn't go south as far as going down there and then went up. They went a little south, going past where the Philistines were. The ancient Egyptians during that time would have had it to where there were garrisons all over in that particular area. All right. So they're going this particular way. Shalom, brother Malachi. If it's the same brother that I think that just said shalom, expect your book next week. Thank you for the support, Aki. All right. If that's the same brother, much respect to you for the support. Expect it next week as discussed. And brothers and sisters, we see right here Mount Sinai in Arabia. Now, why does that become important? Because, brothers and sisters, this Arabia is the land of Midian. In Exodus 3, not to be redundant, but letting the book speak, the Most High told Moses, you will bring the people to this mountain. So that's what we want to point out for reasonable purposes. Moses was in the land of Midian in Exodus 3 when he fled from the Egyptians because his people, Moses' people in today's terms, were being coons, house slaves. We're not going to say the other terminology. No need to. We know what it is. You're going to kill me like you killed an Egyptian. If you did that to Massa, I know you do it to me. Moses said, oh, this matter's known. I got to get up out of here. You can't help everybody. The Israelites that was on it like, you're going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian. Those are homeborn slaves. Those are the ones, we are as grasshoppers in our own sight. Wow. The lack of confidence in having to be told, be strong and of good courage, be strong and of good courage. Everybody didn't have that courage. Getting back into this, Exodus 24, which is after Exodus 19, and Exodus 34, which is after Exodus 24. We will see why that becomes important. It says right here, and we want to sit there and show this, if we will, with the laser pointer. In the second paragraph, the second point on it on the left side, and it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai. No, let's start that again, not being funny. And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the two tables of the testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses knew not that the skin of his face sent forth beams, while he, the Most High, talked with him, Moses. Now, let's look. Remember, they are at Sinai already in Exodus chapter 19. And in between chapter 19 to chapter 34, they're at Sinai. Leviticus 26, verse 46. It says, these are the statutes and ordinances and laws which the Lord made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. So are we to sit back and think that they kept on walking, got more laws like that, and they kept on walking and got more laws? Let me just break it down very candidly. Do you think that they left from Mount Sinai and thought that it was not an abomination to do incest and homosexuality? Because we know that in Exodus 20, verbally it was stated, or through speech, should I say, from the Most High, Lo Tinav. We don't read about laws of homosexuality in a matter, say, with incest until Leviticus 18. So are we to sit there and think that they went into another place outside of Sinai and then got that understanding? Absolutely not. Just because something is written in a different part of the Torah, in a different chapter of the Torah, does not mean that they did not get it while at Sinai. What, and is not trying to be funny, was Moses there for 40 days and 40 nights? And it's not being funny, was it to just receive 10 commandments? We know that's not the case because we read later on in Exodus that it says, be careful to make the tabernacle as I shown you in the mount. The making of the tabernacle starts after Exodus 24 in the commandments. We just read the book after Exodus being in Leviticus. These are the statutes and the ordinances and laws which the Lord Yah made between him and the children of Yisrael, Israel, our ancestors, us, in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. So when we go back here in Exodus 34, and it says, Moses' hand, the tables of the testimony, and Moses' hand. And then we see right here in Leviticus, the hand of Moses. It's not too hard, letting the book speak. Where are we going? Deuteronomy 29, verse 1 for the King JV and many others. In Deuteronomy 28, 69 in the Tanakh, it says, these are the words of the covenant, which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. Let's stop. Horeb is Sinai. I'm going to put that, brothers and sisters, inside of here. All right? Horeb is Sinai. So there won't be no misunderstanding. What we see in Deuteronomy is, in this case here, what is done in Moab. Remembering that Horeb is Sinai. You can look this up in any Bible dictionary. You read Leviticus 26, it reads like that of Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28, or Israelites speak upon that, is, as pointed out here, the covenant besides what was made in Horeb, and is still under the same Torah. So let's say, for instance, that the people were given laws as they went from town to town, city to city, desert to desert, and so forth. The fact is still in the Torah shows it to be just as much weight and value. But what we wanted to point out, brothers and sisters, is that how this brings us back to the subject matter of the meat matter is because of this. The matter of holy days. Exodus 23, 14 to 17. While we have already read Exodus 34, that spoke about them still being in Sinai, right? And then we read in Leviticus 26 about these being the laws, the statutes, and the ordinances given at Mount Sinai. Let's see what some of them are in Exodus 23. And it says this: 3 times shalt thou keep a feast unto me in a year. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee, at the time appointed in the month Abib, for in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And in the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors which thou sowest in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when thou gatherest in thy labors out of the field. End. Why do we point that out? This is talking about the timing of Pesach and the Feast of Unleavened Bread in Exodus. And it says in chapter 23, as I commanded you, which means that the people already knew before they got to Sinai about the keeping of Passover. The first Passover that was kept after the Exodus is mentioned in the book of Numbers. Did you know that? So we already see, brothers and sisters, it's a several month matter from the actual Exodus to the timing we see about them doing the sum of the counting in the wars and everything. Not talking about the war with Rephidim with the Amalekites. That was within the first 3 months of the Exodus. But the first Passover, after the actual water splitting, is mentioned in the book of Numbers. So what can we deduce from reading the first 5 books? That within the mentioning of commandments here and commandments there, laws here and laws there, there's history, and then it gets back into commandments. Then it tells you about the history of what happened with the woman whose son's father was an Egyptian, and then there was a fight. Then it gets into the laws of vows later on after that. Then you go into Numbers, and then you read eventually about the man who gathered sticks, and then you read about the laws of the fringes. But Deuteronomy starts off by saying in the 40th year. And then there are more laws that we read already. So the laws, statutes, and commandments and ordinances were given at Mount Sinai and throughout the wilderness wandering. But that does not mean that one holds less weight than the other. Because if that were to try to be the case, then you're saying that a man could wear a woman's garment or a woman could wear a man's garment. Because you don't read about that until Deuteronomy, after it already said the 40th year. Mind you, the word Deuteronomy itself means repetition, which means that the people already knew the laws already. Israel, as we know, need a reminder. Hence our fringes. So, brothers and sisters, recapping this right here and how it gets into the matter with diet, with meat, and so forth, is this. The 3 times in the year, Shalosh Regalim, said by some, or the 3 pilgrimages. The Passover, the people ate lamb, which is flesh. We went over in part 1, if there be a house too small for one lamb, you're supposed to share it with your neighbor with you. The eating of meat and being a complete vegan, a complete herbivore, or a complete vegetarian is not endorsed in the Torah, even before the book of Exodus. We read about the Feast of the Harvest, the first fruits of labors, sowing in the field, in the Feast of Ingathering. So we read about, brothers and sisters, the Passover, Pesach, Chag Matzot, Feast of Unleavened Bread. Chag Shabuot, the Feast of Weeks, also mentioned in Leviticus 23. And we also read about Chag Sukkot, Feast of Booths. When you go to Numbers chapter 28 and Numbers chapter 29, those holy days we just read about here include the eating of meat. When you read, brothers and sisters, in Numbers chapter 28 and Numbers chapter 29, these holy days that we just read of includes the eating of meat. Shalom.